Josh, I will start with you.
Yeah. So, really, so I took kind of the the low hanging fruit of all of us, I think, with the backup quarterback position, right? And how I approached this was if I approached it as if I was talking to the GM and laying out a plan to solve for the backup quarterback position, right? So I went through, and we'll get into it. Sit back and relax, guys, because I'm about to go into a bunch of stats. We're going to talk about league averages versus backup quarterbacks, and then we'll get into how I quote unquote think we should solve this in various ways, right? So looking back at last year, right, I'm going to go through all four of our quarterbacks and kind of the key key stats that they had for last season. All right. So Tua Tagovailoa played 11 games. He started all 11. He completed 291 passes out of 399 attempts for a 72.9% completion percentage for 2867 passing yards, which averaged just over 7.2 yards per attempt. 19 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. He took 21 sacks, which we'll speak to another position later on. He had a 101.4 passer rating, 17 rush attempts. That's 16 too many. 49 rushing yards, 17 concussions. No, I'm kidding. 0 rushing touchdowns, 7 fumbles, which he lost 2 of them. Okay. So looking at his stats as a starter, albeit he only played 11 games due to, was it 2 concussions? Is that what it was? There was concussion and something else. I can't remember.
A hip injury.
Excuse me. That's what it was. He led the team only playing 11. He led them in just about every major statistical category, right? And we'll get to league some of these key ones versus league averages. And I apologize, I'm looking off camera. I have all of this written down, so there's no way I was memorizing all of this. Now we get into the backups, where I think a true, genuine position of need is, right? So Tyler Huntley played 5 games, started the 5 that he played in, right? He had 86 completions out of 133 attempts, completed 64.7% of his passes for just under 829 yards, 6.2 per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 15 sacks taken for a passer rating of 80.1, right? Now, granted, when he stepped in, I was high on him in certain ways. I did not think that in any capacity he should be a regular starting quarterback, right? But I thought with his scrambling ability and what he has on tape, for lack of a better term, over the last handful of seasons, you could see that there's something there to work with. I was very wrong. Horribly wrong. I'm not saying that he can't turn into a serviceable backup. I'm not saying he won't even be on the team. Maybe he is. Who knows? But yeah, I was very wrong about him. Skylar Thompson played 3 games, started 1, 21 completions out of 33 attempts, 63.6% completion percentage for 187 passing yards.
Oh, God.
On 21 completions, 187 yards, 5.7 yards per attempt, 0 tuds, 0 interceptions. So, hey, there's that. Maybe that's what you can. Maybe that's why Pittsburgh signed him. I don't know. 6 sacks taken for a 78.7 passer rating. He's horrible. I don't even think he is a good college quarterback right now, let alone any kind of serviceable, NFL quarterback, in my opinion. And my issue with Skylar, and I think we can all agree on this, and I'll pause after I get through Tim Boyle so we can chat about it before I get into my kind of league average comparisons and into how I fix this position. Skylar, I felt got the short end of the stick. I'm glad he's off the team. Sorry. I mean, nothing personal, but I feel like Mike McDaniel's stubbornness with Thompson really put him at a disadvantage, right? I think we can all agree, and those that are watching and those that are listening later, I think we can all agree that Skylar was not ready and is not ready and should not be ready. Should not be on the field right now, right? He would be in the G League in the NBA, in my opinion, right? Does not belong on a bench. And Mike McDaniel stubbornness with, he's been in my system for 3 years, and this is someone that, can do it. I'm not going to change the offense for a completely different player than Tua Tagovailoa. we're going to just plop him in there and he's going to do well, I think put him at a disadvantage, and it shows. Then we get to poor old Tim Boyle. I want to give the guy a hug, but see you later. 2 games played, 0 games started, 15 of 26 for 15 completions for 26 attempts, 57.7% completion percentage for 153 yards, 5.9 per attempt, 0 tuds, 0 interceptions, 1 sack taken for a 74.7 passer rating. Tim is what Tim is, right?
Yeah.
He's a name on a roster. He's your 4th quarterback. Break glass in case of emergency and hope to God you never have to, right? Unfortunately for us, our starter decided that he's a running back from time to time, and coming back from a concussion decided to scramble to get the first down in the red zone against the Bills and dive headfirst into a safety. Was it Damar Hamlin? Damar Hamlin's knee to get shucken up again. I mean, so, okay. Tim Boyle had to play, fine. What does the 3 backups stuff tell us, right? So, I mean, overall, you look at the Dolphins room. I mean, they face challenges. They're filled with issues. They're, unfortunately, we had so many backups and so many players that were not ready take meaningful snaps for us in big games. I mean, look at Huntley. There was no way he should have played 5 games for us, but he had to. Excuse me, because our starter got injured. But unfortunately, these were the players that we determined should be on the team. And that opens up a whole nother line of questioning, which is why we're doing this exercise, right? So I'm going to pause here before I get into some of the other fun stuff that I have for these quarterbacks. And this was a really, really fun exercise where I compared key stats to league averages and kind of what their comparison was to those, whether it was average, below average, or above average. But what are your guys' thoughts on the backup quarterback position? I mean, I think it's a consensus that it's bad, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think first and foremost, Josh, it is worth pointing out that Tyler Huntley was kind of thrown into the fire here. Like he was picked up, kind of on the fly off of the Ravens practice squad, and thrust into this starting position without ever really learning the offense.
Yeah, true.
Just to be fair to him, that doesn't mean he was good. That doesn't mean that his performance should be excused. It's just in the interest of fairness. I wanted to point that out.
Oh, and I'm with you 1,000%, right? I mean, short end of the stick, meet Tyler Huntley, right?
Yeah. And as far as Skylar Thompson goes, I actually had more hope for him than anybody on this show. He started that playoff game against the Bills 2 years ago, and almost, Dolphins were kind of close to a victory in that one. So, I had a little bit of hope for Skylar Thompson, and then I watched him play against the Seahawks, and that was rough. That was tough to watch. And basically from that point on, it was like, okay, I don't know what we're going to do until Tua comes back. This is why we're talking about backup quarterback right now. I don't want to feel that way again. I don't want to feel, like we're caught in the middle of the desert without any water. Like, what the hell are we going to do until Tua comes back? I don't want to feel that way. So this is why we're identifying backup quarterback as a need. So,
100%. I'm 100% with you, buddy. Seriously.
So I don't know how you guys feel about it. Anthony, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, overall, throughout the whole year, I've been curious as to how much of it is coaching and how much of it is these guys are just not very good quarterbacks. I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. Very clearly, our coach has done a good job with Tua. It's the best he's ever been in his entire career, so he knows how to coach a quarterback. But is there such a thing as your system being too much based on your quarterback? Probably not. Like, your QB1 is your QB1 for a reason. Like, you should base everything on him. The backup definitely needs addressing. I am curious to see how Josh is going to address it because I don't know what the answer is.
Yep. What about you, Taylor? Any thoughts before I get on to the league averages?
No. The only thing I will add is just Huntley, like you guys said, thrown into the fire. And based on everything that you've shared so far, if there's anybody we bring back in a role, I would want it to be Huntley.
Why would you say that?
Obviously-
Can you let a guy cook, please?
Well, I'm just saying, obviously, like Skylar Thompson's off the board, but ideally the thing would be like Huntley in the QB3, but that still leaves the position of need, and that is backup quarterback QB2. So, Josh, I was trying to lead you into it.
Yeah,
So,
but you
go
spoiled
ahead.
a third of my bullet points at the end. I'm kidding. I'm just messing with you guys. It's fine. It's fine. Right. I think it's well known. But anyway, so league averages, right? So again, these are approximations, right? So for those crazy stat heads, please don't write. I mean, you can write me if you want to, but I promise you I won't respond. So I looked at three major kind of areas, right, that I think are very indicative of how a quarterback plays, right, and the talent level that he has, and that's completion percentage, yards per attempt, and passer rating, right? I feel like that's kind of a relatively a universal. If those three are good, you have a good guy. If those three are mediocre, he's okay, and if they're bad, he's bad, right? So on a league level, for all of the quarterbacks, for every single quarterback that took a snap, I think it was over. I forgot what I think it was over 50 snaps. I think it was, and I looked at those, right, because I didn't want to take a guy that threw 1 for 100% because I feel like it skews things. But the approximate league average completion percentage was 66%. The approximate yards per attempt was around 7.5, and passer rating was 93.6. Okay, so I took Tua, Huntley, Skylar, and Tim's stats for those three, and I compared them to what the league average was to give us an idea how they stacked up against the average, right? So from Tua's standpoint, his completion percentage was 72.9. Like I said earlier, the league average is 66. I graded that, if you will, at above average, right? Yards per attempt was 7.2. Mind you, 11 game sample size, an offense that decided all it was going to do was throw balls 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage on screen plays as an extension of the run game and hope for the best. So yards per attempt for Tua was 7.2, league average was 7.5, so slightly below average, right? But with context, with an asterisk, if you will. Passer rating of 104.4, league average was 93.6. So I considered that well above. I'm probably not well above average, but above average, right? So as a whole, Tua, who's our starter, Anthony, to your point, played very well. And if your starter goes down, especially a starter that you're paying the amount of money you're paying him, your season's kind of screwed. Sorry, it is what it is, right? Tyler Huntley, completion percentage, 64.7 versus the league average of 66, below average. Yards per attempt, 6.2 compared to the league average of 7.5, below average. There's a trend here if you're noticing. Passer rating 80.1 versus 93.6, below average. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because it does not get any better. Skylar Thompson for completion percentage, for yards per attempt, and for passer rating, all below average, well below average in his case. And Tim Boyle, same across for all three, right? So we have a starting quarterback in Tagovailoa, who was above average in just, and I'm only listing the three. I think I did 5, but I only listed the 3 big ones. Was either above average, slightly above average, or just below average on one of them across the board, and compared to the league average. And then you have all of our backups, which combined took meaningful snaps, played 7 or 8 games out of, or 7 games. I can do math, I promise. All below average on all of the key metrics that determines whether your quarterback is good or bad, right? In hindsight. Not great. Not great at all. And that is why, again, not to beat the horse with a stick, this is why this is a key, for me, was a key position of need. How do I fix it? Right? What if I was talking to my GM and my GM was like, dude, I will follow whatever your word to the letter of the law. You tell me how we fix it and I will do it. These were the 3 main things that I came up with. And in chat, please feel free to argue, disagree, say I hit a home run, or tell me how you would solve this. We want to hear how you would fix this, right? How you would fix and solve the backup quarterback position.
No, cue the Tua comments. Here they come.
Yeah, here they come. Right, let's trade them. Right, let's go sign Joe Burrow. How I would fix it, first of all, it would be I would allocate a later round draft pick I'm in Anthony's corner on this. I would draft a quarterback every year. That does not mean you draft them high. I mean, unless you're there, unless it's Archie Manning, for example. Kidding. Or whatever the hell the kid's name is in Texas.
Not kidding. You shouldn't be kidding.
I'm not. He's awesome. Anyways, but allocate a later round pick. We have a lot of them. Take a flyer. You genuinely never know. And best case scenario, I'm sorry. Best case scenario, he pans out and turns out to be a great quarterback, and you have a choice. Do you keep Tua on a big contract, or do you trade him and keep the guy? Or you do what the Patriots did a few times, a la Jimmy G, and you take a quarterback, you develop him, and then you trade him for higher assets, right? So always, every year I would be allocating a later round draft pick to at this position. I would also re-sign Huntley as QB3. Taylor. I'm kidding. Obviously it is determined on what contract and how those negotiations go and how long it is and what where are the triggers in the contract from a money standpoint. Is it very, incentive laden, or is it kind of here's everything up front? We never see you on the field kind of thing. So if the contract is team friendly, and I hate using that word because I'm very pro player getting their cash, but if it is team friendly, I'm all for it. Fine, bring him back, set him on the bench, and hope to God you never have to see him. Let him stay in our system and develop, and maybe he can turn into something that we can turn into another asset, right? And this is where, and this last point, my third point on the backup quarterback position, is where I really believe this is how we solve this, right? The other two were just kind of padding the stats, for lack of a better term. I think a high-priced free agent backup is what we need. I think that is the way you solve this. I would expect that the Dolphins at this point in time need to be either leading the league or one of the top teams in the league at cost per backup quarterback, right? I mean, I'm thinking like let's call it 6 to 8 million average contract per year type assets to a backup quarterback, which is something you never really want to do. The unfortunate part about all of this is we have an injury-prone quarterback who's awesome when he's on the field. That cannot be argued. He is awesome when he's on the field. The only thing is when he's on the field, right? And I don't think we can go into another year with Tim Boyles and with Skylar Thompsons of the world and with, the Huntleys of the world. You have to snag a good quarterback. Now, the question comes, do you take an older veteran, or do you grab one of the younger kind of busts, if you will, the higher draft pick busts that need a change of scenery? That is a question, and we will answer that on later shows. We are keeping this very high level, but those are the type of things you look into to solve this position, and that is what I would be recommending to a GM should he ask what the hell I'm at. What would I do?
We need like an applause soundbite after the end of
Well, I'm gonna chime in here, Josh. I agree with everything you said. I think when you have a quarterback like Tua, and you have a quarterback who's as oft injured as Tua is, you need to get a good backup in there. You can't just basically punt these games where Tua's not in there, which is essentially what the Dolphins did by putting Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley, who hadn't learned the offense yet, in, instead of Tua. So yeah, I don't know what quarterbacks are going to be out there necessarily. I don't know what quarterbacks are going to be available in later rounds that might fit what we do, and we'll get into that in later episodes, like you said. But I think it's super important to get a good backup in here. So, bravo, love what you said.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for listening to my stats. I'm a stat head. I love it.
You guys have any more comments on the backup quarterback position?
So the only thing I'd add is I'm not sure about Huntley plus a draft pick plus free agent allocation there. That really seems like we are going overkill, but I kind of get why, right? Because this is something that has got to be handled. So if you're going to fix it, I'd rather be over prepared and have too many options to where we probably have to cut a 7th round draft pick or Tyler Huntley,
Mhm.
depending on who wins that
Well,
QB3.
and that was my thought process, right? Is it whoever wins out between that late round draft pick, insert random name, and Huntley, whoever wins out is on the practice squad and the other guy's out, right? I mean, that was kind of the thought process. So you need to load the chamber going into practice and going into kind of the off-season plan that they have. Let them battle it out, and may the best man win.
And it's also worth pointing out the Dolphins played 4 quarterbacks this year.
Mhm.
Didn't want to. Ideally you stick with one, or two.
Mhm.
But the Dolphins had 4 quarterbacks who, saw the field for them this year.
Yeah, and I would assume that third quarterback is on the practice squad as the emergency kind of injured guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard a stat somewhere that the past 5 years there's been
Mhm.
60 plus starting quarterbacks every year. That's how often they go down.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's a wild stat.
That's crazy.
That's nuts.